Hey guys, welcome to another episode of She Knows Arsenal Extra Time. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Justino Tweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Yeah, welcome you guys. There's already about 40 of you guys in here, which is amazing. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. As you can see, the gang is all here. We finally got an opportunity to get everybody together to kind of have a chit chat around Arsenal's game against Crystal Palace, where we won 2-0, as well as kind of the other scores and debuts for game week 1 just across the Premier League, and a little bit of chat around All or Nothing. So we have a good show in store for you guys today. So make sure you get into the chat and let us know what you guys are thinking. And without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce you. If you guys haven't been here, this is like the usual crew. Like when we all try to get together, like this is the vibes. Like this is what we want, you know? So bottom left is Harry. Hi, Harry. How you doing?
All right, how's it going?
That's it. So all of this. And then
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm all dance moves, no action. I'm all dance moves, no talk. I'm good. How are you? How are you? It's great to be back on the show with you guys. I feel like it's been a long time.
Yeah, it has been. Bottom right is Souls. Souls, how you doing?
I'm all good. It doesn't even feel that long because we just keep talking on chat. So it's like we'd never actually miss anything. But now it's good to actually be back and talking.
Yeah, 100%. And upper right is George. How you doing, George?
I'm good, Jess. It's good to be back. I think I'm excited for new seasons. I'm always somebody that likes a new slate, likes to learn what maybe we've changed, what we haven't changed, what we need to work on. All these things are always open for me, and you get a blank new slate for me, at least at the beginning of a new season. And I find there's been a couple things that we found, whether it's been all or nothing, whether it's been preseason, our transfer market, there's new things that we've seen. Some good, some bad, some of the same, some better. But again, I'm just excited because we've actually got quite a bit of content, Arsenal-wise. And, of course, Premier League, when it's back, I don't know about you guys, but this dominates my life. So when I can talk football, it's always good.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like once it started, it was like, oh yeah, I've been missing this. I've been missing this. I've been missing like getting really nervous about our game and watching others' games. And like it feels so good. Like the transfer window is amazing, but there's nothing like when the season is actually going on. So obviously, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of everything, but I want to start off with hot takes, as I was kind of saying backstage before Harry got here. You just gotta say something. So, Harry, I hope you have one because I'm going to go to you first. Harry, what is your hot take?
My hot take is that both Chelsea and Man United are going to finish outside the top 6 this season. Outside the top 4, sorry. Outside the top 4. I think both Chelsea and United are going to struggle this season. And not so much off today's game. I mean, with Man United's case, definitely off today's game. I get the sense with Chelsea, it's a bit of an aging team. I get the vibe that Tuchel isn't particularly happy there, and because of all the money that they're spending, all the money they're going to spend, I think when things start to unsettle a little bit, I think Tuchel will either walk or be sacked. And I think Man United are in a very similar place to us when Arteta took over. I think they're a bit of a mess, and that's not necessarily criticism of Ten Hag, but I just think the job there is huge. There's a lot of players who just simply aren't good enough, similar to what Arteta inherited at Arsenal, and I think already you can see some unrest between the fans at Old Trafford, and I think that's a sign that their patience won't particularly match where they are. And I think there'll be some unrest early doors because I think a lot of United fans are unaware of how big or how huge that rebuild is. And I really think that is the case. And it's going to take a long time, I believe, for Ten Hag to show what he's about, as it did with Arteta. So I think Man United fans are in for a bit of a surprise this season, I believe.
I like that one. I like that one a lot. Obviously, when we get into hits and misses, like for game week 1, we'll probably touch on some of that stuff. But Souls, what is your hot take?
Erling Haaland and KDB are going to break records this season. And what I mean by that, Haaland's going to break the goal scoring record and KDB is going to break the assist record. The reason I say that isn't just because of this game. I do feel Haaland will eventually break it if he doesn't do it this season, but I reckon he's just going to be on something different. And we're seeing it today. And I think the way that Man City have started to play is to his strengths, especially that second goal. That second goal was phenomenal. The way they played it was superb and exactly what Haaland likes to do. But you can also see the way Haaland done it for the first game, where it was in a bit of a tighter situation where he needed to run onto the ball and the keeper was there, rounded the keeper, obviously drew the foul, got the penalty. And I think similar things are going to happen now where KDB's got a target to hit and it's no longer sort of a pseudo striker or someone filling in for that role, whether it's a Foden, Gundogan. Obviously we know they had Gabriel Jesus, but they've never had this threatening striker when KDB's been firing. Like Aguero's been injured a few times as well when they had him. So that's going to be my hot take for the season.
Nice. I don't feel like that's so out of the realm of possibilities based on what we saw last season and this season so far in their first game. Wow, Haaland is insane. George, what's your hot take?
Yeah, so I struggled because for me, I have a couple actually, and between Southampton potentially being relegated, I think I've settled mainly on praising Brentford, who I really believe in as a club. I feel they're due for a top half finish and potentially even challenging Europe. That's how highly I rate Thomas Frank, both as a manager and their squad. I think replacing Eriksson with Damsgaard, they then added Aaron Hickey. They got Lewis Potter in. Those are some really smart pickups for a team for me that were, bar injuries, a very, very good team. And I think under the radar, had David Raya not gotten a serious injury, and of course Josh Da Silva, a previous Arsenal grad, not been severely injured, who was very important for them in the championships. I think that Brentford are a team that are going to be a very big surprise package, not just in the season, but finish quite high, not just mid-table and do quite well, kind of like your Leeds of previous seasons. I think they're actually going to be pushing a lot more for Europe. And I do think Southampton, just to kind of tag off, they're very big candidates for being relegated. I don't love their transfer business. I thought they recruited very young. I love a lot of the prospects that they recruited, but I think we even saw in their game, it was quite naive, quite inexperienced in their gameplay. And I think that Southampton are going to really struggle because they haven't replaced the goals that Broja left. And until they do that, and until they add a little bit more experience, those are two teams that I'm looking at for both good and bad reasons that I think might be a little bit outside the realms of most people's predictions.
Interesting. Love that. So I have two, because I just, like you, George, I couldn't settle on one. There's just so many from the first game week. So I guess my first hot take is that Nottingham Forest did too much. A lot of people were praising their transfer business, and I think when you look at the sides that have been promoted, it's you want them to do the business. You don't want them to come up with the exact same team. You want them to reinforce so that they can compete. But I think when you gut the team and you start over with something completely different, you have a bunch of new players in there. You just don't have any continuity to grab onto, no foundation. And I look at what Nottingham Forest did, the players that they brought in, and I'm thinking to myself that might have actually been more to the detriment. I think Fulham have done a much better job keeping the core group of their players together, because they did something quite similar with Scotty Parker the year prior when they had come up. They gutted the squad. There was players that helped them get promoted that were put into reserve. And I'm not sure that that's the right thing to do. I think you have to keep somewhat of the foundation that you had coming up, because those are the players that know how to play with each other, and then add some players that can help you to compete. So for me, Fulham has kind of done the right thing, and Nottingham Forest to me looked rank. For all those new players that they brought in, it's gonna take them some time to gel, and maybe they will and maybe they won't. My second hot take is that the the Premier League is wrapped up. City have it. I don't think anybody's gonna get near them. I think, it may be early days for what Liverpool can do, but I don't think they've done enough in terms of their transfer business. They would have to be damn near perfect to stop the City team. When they got into the 65th minute and they scored their second goal, Haaland scored the second goal, they started to make their substitutions, and their team was just really, really strong. A lot of good depth, a lot of plug and play, very what we know from Pep. But now they have a cheat code for when teams want to press onto them and try to, insert themselves or apply themselves in the game. West Ham, they had 15 good minutes, where they looked like they were going to score. And City came down with 2-3 passes and boom, 2-0, game's done. So they've kind of figured out a way to not be stopped with Haaland. He can do something different. They have Alvarez coming off of the bench. They have players that have been there for a while and some other players that are 1 year in, like Grealish. So for me, unless Liverpool do something, it's wrapped up. Like, it's done. I think City have done enough, you know. I think they're good, you know. So not really looking forward to
But really
playing them
quickly,
again.
Jess, you know what's really interesting about the Premier? I don't know if you guys all kind of feel this way, but all top 6 teams have really changed their ethos and philosophy. If you look at it, City have replaced their outlets, with Sterling, Jesus, with basically ball to feet players. And when you look at Liverpool, they've replaced their major striker, going for a bit more of a pivot in midfield with a Nunez who likes to drift wide, like Haaland. They've added channel running strikers for a little bit more solidity in the middle. That's going to, I think, change the title race. But also, when you look at Chelsea and you look at Spurs and even Arsenal and Manchester United, we've all gone through changes and rebuilds in our own right. Chelsea's recruiting Koulibaly, Sterling, potentially who they might get if Fofana works out. I think they're really changing their ethos as well in terms of maybe going to a back four. Is Tuchel finally going to do that? Is he going to trust his youth? Like, there's a lot of questions for me that make me believe that we're not going to have a 90-point season again this season. There's going to be a lot of title challenges that I think, despite City running away with it, I'm not too sure if we get the 90-point total, just because teams are going through major transitions in terms of how they play. I don't know if you guys felt similar. I think the league is going to be a lot more competitive, not just, in terms of mid-table teams, but also top 6. I think we see the spread close, and we won't see as much of that clear distinctions between top 3 and then maybe 3 to 7 and then 7 below.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think City are definitely favourites, but I think ourselves and Spurs included are closer this year to Liverpool and City. So I think that point gap will decrease. It's interesting on Chelsea, actually, about you saying whether Tuchel goes to a back four. You'd think he'd try that, but then in the same respect, they've just signed Cucurella. So then you're thinking, where does that fit in? Or does that mean you drop Chilwell and then you've got 55 million sitting on the bench, or however much Chilwell costs? So then that points to a 3-4-3 again, doesn't it? Which maybe works in everyone's favour, because I don't think Chelsea. I think Chelsea personally should probably step away from that. But same for me, Jess. I think City win the league this year. But the great thing about Liverpool is they do have an incredible team spirit, an incredible desire. And last year, when City were running away with it, they kind of, called themselves back into that title race. 1, because City faltered a little bit, but 2, because Liverpool don't give up. So obviously it's hard because we don't want to take too much into consideration when we're just 1 game in. But naturally, you see 1 game of football and it kind of gives you visions of what's going to happen for the whole year. I still think Liverpool are a really good team, even though they did look average against Fulham. And then when they started to make changes against Fulham, then you looked at their midfield, it was Milner, Henderson and Harvey Elliott, and then you go, that's not great. I mean, it could be good, but you think that's not the level, that's not where you want to be. And then when you're taking off Diaz, and they brought on their new player from Fulham, I can't remember his name, it's escaped me.
Carvalho.
That's it. Yeah. Then you're thinking, wow, like this feels like a really youthful team now. So yeah, City is certainly leading the line in that respect, and especially from a squad. And what's interesting is they've lost Sterling, who for them is a big player, but you bring in Haaland, and then it just raises the level massively. So yeah,
I mean,
I think City for me.
When I
Do you know
look
what it
at
is, though?
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead, Phil.
I was just going to say, just on the back of what Harry said, when he said about the youthful thing, that's the big problem. We know how problematic it can be at times, where that's what kind of, I'm not going to say they let us down on getting top 4, but it was one of the reasons why we didn't get it over the line. And I feel like it could be to the detriment of Liverpool that when those clutch moments come in, can those youngsters get them over the line? And look, every young player is different. Some, like Haaland, look at him, he's got a monster mentality, but sometimes some can. And I feel like, have they done the right thing in replacing Mane with Diaz and Carvalho? Could be the wrong thing to do. They needed a bit of experience, and then they added Darwin Núñez, again, another player who had a very good season away from the Premier League, and then they bought him in. That's no shade on him. I'm not saying he's going to do terrible, but it's a risk that they're taking, and especially to lose a senior figure to then replace him with so many young players. goes to show that it could falter. But again, Klopp has signed a long-term deal, so this could be the second rebuild he's doing. So
I
I
mean, you
think
have
this
to
is
go
going to be
again,
time to
right?
tell. Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing. You have to go again. And the only way to do that is, Liverpool are going to look long term. They're going to want to build something again. So instead of doing short term things, they're going to have to take risks and hope that, the senior players that they have can kind of paper over the cracks of maybe having some young players that don't have the same experience as somebody like Mane. I do think that, I get why they did it. They wanted to sell him and move him on, give those wages over to Mohamed Salah. As long as Salah is the same player, I don't think anybody will look at that as a bad thing. But losing Mane or selling him is a big deal. It's very hard to replace somebody of that level in your squad. And so Luis Diaz, I think, is a great player, but he's definitely not as clinical as Mane. He doesn't have that same gravitas that Mane has. And then you have that young kid Carvalho, like you guys said. So I'm not saying that they're finished or they're going to finish outside of the top 4 or anything like that. I'm just saying when you look at City and you look at the balance of them bringing in a couple of younger, or like Haaland, he's younger. They still have most of their foundation, even though they've gotten rid of Sterling and Jesus. It still feels like they're a little bit more robust. They still have a little bit more meat on the bone, where I don't know, Liverpool just seem a little bit they keep getting injuries as well, which is you look at Thiago keeps getting muscle injuries. There's certain players that are still kind of in and out, which is yeah, I think they look a little bit weaker.
I think they're very similar to Dortmund and Klopp's Dortmund system. If you really look back when it's early Dortmund, when he first got Lewandowski, that's very similar to what Nunez is starting out as. If people remember, Lewandowski had to work quite a bit on becoming clinical. He was this tall, very youthful, promising striker with great movement. Very typical of Nunez, who has a variety of finishes, but right now isn't the clinical striker that you saw. Then you start looking at, Diaz, who reminds me quite a bit of early Royce. And then when you look at their kind of inside forwards, they're looking at Firmino, Carvalho, which I think are going to be their 10s. And they're looking to be a lot more pivot in setup. And by the way, City are doing the same. They're looking to be a little bit more pivot in setup themselves. And I think they're going back. City, it makes more sense. I think that's a push for the Champions League if we're still in the hot take category. I think he's changing his system to be a little bit more accommodating with transition control in the center. That's kind of why they're moving towards it. But then Liverpool, I think, just to bounce off your point, have a bigger change in that tactical switch because of the players and quality that they're changing with. It doesn't mean that long term that they're something to be worried with, but the fact is their current levels are a little bit less than maybe a City B team who are changing. Both teams are going through different tactical changes, kind of in a similar vein. But I think one team is just a little bit deeper of a squad that they can withstand those changes a lot more than, say, a Liverpool who haven't had the same squad. Like one of the big benefits of pushing City was their starting 11 was of equal quality to City. And I think most people, the only reason they didn't have them as clear favorites was depth in comparison to City. And I think if you change tactically so much, which both teams are doing, that's going to be the same story, just to a different extent. And City are going to be able to cope with it just a little bit more because their squad's deeper.
Yeah. I hear I feel like a lot of people would make these conclusions. I feel like a lot of people see that, and it's not to say I know we all rate Liverpool very highly. It just it's fine margins, right?
Clear
You make
second,
changes.
by the way. Don't get it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's saying it's the end of the world. It's just you just look at City and you're they're just playing on a completely different stratosphere than the rest of us. But any of you guys watched American Horror Story or no? Have you guys ever watched it?
Yeah.
I've watched
Okay,
a bit of it.
so George has watched it, so he'll know this reference. If you watch, I think it was Coven, they talk about Supremes, right? And their whole saying is a new Supreme will arrive when the old one dies. And I thought about that a lot watching William Saliba play and look
what a segue, Jess.
amazing.
What a segue.
Look amazing. And then watching Virgil van Dijk look like a fallen Supreme, one basically the old Supreme, their powers get shifted onto the new. And that's just kind of what I feel like I saw, So there's 250 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. But we're going to get into hits and misses for our game against Crystal Palace. And so basically, you guys, it's just what worked and what didn't, so get in the chat and let us know what you guys think. But I'm going to let's go with hits first. Let's start off with the positive and maybe move into the negative. And yeah, because I had that segue, I'm just gonna go ahead and take it. The hit was William Saliba, wasn't it? Like, I mean, the guy was crazy. I was just like, the whole time I was just like, he's so good. He's so good. He's so good. We're actually watching him play for Arsenal. This is insane. Oh my gosh, he's so good. And I never felt worried in terms of like his sweeping up and being able to be calm and cool and collected back there. He was the youngest, but he looked the most kind
Authoritative.
of, yeah, the most like
Assured.
he's been there, done that before. He was so assured, and like it's weird because I thought last season it was kind of even between Gabriel and White in terms of like they were both kind of leaders in some points and leader follower. They were very evenly balanced, different characteristics, but evenly balanced in terms of stature in that back line. But you can definitely see that there's a level there that Saliba is at, and he's only 21, so he's going to get better. But there's really a level there where he's kind of like here, and the others are kind of like down here. But he makes them better. I think the team feels more confident with him back there because we haven't had a player like this in a long time. We really haven't, like that complete juggernaut, Rolls Royce type of center back. We just haven't had it. And I thought beyond Haaland, he had the best debut in the game week 1 of all of like the new signings, like better than Nunez, better than all these other players. I think he stood out the most as a player that people had decided that because he had been loaned out a couple of times, maybe he wasn't that good or, whatever. But this guy is freaking mustard. Like, it's just insane. I don't know what we have. I mean, he's our beyond. Is it a hot take to say he might be top 2, 3 of our players in terms of ceiling?
Overall,
Yeah,
well,
overall ceilings,
Potentially, definitely.
ceilings for sure. I've been saying it for a while. It's like ex Saliba season. I've been somebody that's been more so. I think he changes in how we evaluate center backs in the future. And it's not just the assuredness, it's what he can do with the ball and when he steps up into midfield. Something that we haven't seen, by the way, is his carrying and his involvement in midfield. Something that if you've watched him previously, something that he's more than mustard at. It's actually quite scary when you see a person of his size, his control in wide spaces, recovery, but then able to stop, turn, set play, and then actually get the attack started, but also up the tempo. Like there's really not many weaknesses he has, except for maybe just defending corners from wide. That's something that I do think consistently he does need to have a little bit more work on. But again, you're talking about what a 20-year-old kind of center back that for me, it's crazy. He's in the young player of the year conversations here now in England when he just won it in League One. Like, it's a player that I think changes what we can do. And I don't think it's a hot take at all, just ceiling wise, to see he's top 3 in the squad. For me, I think he does the most in his position in terms of center backs. And what I mean by that is Bakayo has excellent kind of quality, but wingers is a very deep pool. When you look at center backs and top young center back prospects in the world, I don't think there's a better prospect than William Saliba. And then when you look at it in 5 years, what could he be? The sky's the limit for that boy. So I'm totally with you ceiling wise. I think he needs to play more to confirm it, but I have said I feel as though he's our most assured center back. I think experience is the only thing that'll probably take it back a little bit. Like, you say all these positives, but of course, you look at a player right now that does need to prove it consistency wise in a top flight, but I have no doubts about that. So the only thing really is a platform. I've never questioned the talent. I've only just questioned, has he had the platform to show it consistently for people broadly? But this boy will change quite a bit. And I think he even helped Ben White quite a bit with Zaha. That was an underrated battle that I think Ben White did very well defensively, but was kind of poor on the ball. And I think Saliba really helped him sweeping not just Zaha, but IU when he dropped in and Eze. It was a monster class. I hate to do the word on Twitter, but it was an insane one. And you kind of took my positive, but I have another one I can always say. But yeah, Saliba. What else could you say about that boy?
I mean, I just don't know. It's just insane. Harry, so before you do your hit, I have to ask you, is this somewhat of a hot take here? That this is from Tell Me This, I'll Tell You This, that Saliba and Gabriel could surpass the levels of Toure and Campbell. I feel like, I don't know. What do you think, Harry?
I mean, it's tough, isn't it? We obviously need to calm down a little bit. We're one game into the season, but I think obviously, like you said, Saliba was absolutely incredible. That was a really good centre half pairing, but that complemented each other really well. Campbell wasn't so great on the ball. Toye was really good on the ball, but both were fast. Campbell had a bit of slow acceleration, but once he got going, he was really, really fast. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's levels to Saliba and Gabriel for sure. There's a conversation whether it's Saliba and Gabriel or whether it's Saliba and White. I'm not sure. It feels like it's Saliba and Gabriel at the moment. Maybe White will become a victim of his versatility and always play that right side of that back four. Maybe when Tomiyasu steps in, we then have a conversation to have about Ben White and who comes in, whether it's Ben White or Tomiyasu. But there's no doubt, Saliba was incredible. I was at the game, and what's really noticeable is how big the guy is, both in height and in width. You know, he has some shoulders on him. So when there's players taking him on, you know, once he gets his pace going and then he steps across, that's it. It's game over for that attacker. So I think that's what's really, really rewarding for me, is that now you look at a team and you go, shit, these guys are big. Gabriel's, you know, relatively tall. Saliba's an absolute beast. Ben White's relatively tall. So you've now got an intimidating defence, which is what you want. And yeah, I said to my dad during the game, I was like, there is an authority to Saliba that we haven't seen in a long time. And with that comes calmness, right? You feel at ease. You feel like you're in control of situations. There's not a slow Socrates or a panicking Mustafi running back. You've now got like this authority and ego and arrogance in defence. And that's something that we've missed for a long time. So yeah, really impressed with Saliba. I'm really happy I got to see it, in the flesh. My hit will be Aaron Ramsdale, minus his one poor pass out from the back. I thought he had a really solid and assured game. I thought he made two really crucial saves. And after watching Arsenal All or Nothing, I had this massive love for Ramsdale and his mum and his dad. And his dad was in the stands at Crystal Palace as well. So I thought, Ramsdale had a really positive game, made some really crucial saves. And I'm expecting a big season from Ramsdale, and I hope he manages to maintain his consistency. And I do think having an improved defence this year, because even though we improved our defence last year, we've now gone up again with Saliba. I think that will really, really help Ramsdale as well. So yeah, my hit for the game was Ramsdale.
So with Ramsdale, like, I think he had a good game, but I think watching him and realizing that, like, okay, his passing out of the back is up there. Like, he's really like, that's why we got him, right? That's it. Like, the distribution from the back is definitely something that we looked at. But, Souls, I guess I'll throw this to you. When you watch him play, do you get the sense that maybe this is just what we're going to get, is somebody that's kind of like elite in distribution, has the passing range to really help us unlock things and have a different look and all that kind of stuff, but he's always going to have that little bit of arrogance that he could potentially get caught out? Or do you think that that's something that will smooth out in time? Because I have I'll give my take on it, but I want to know what you think.
I don't see it as a problem. The most elite distributors have that in them. Alisson's done it. Edison does it.
You guys, Nuno scored.
Nuno Tavares. Wait, how did he score? Isn't he suspended?
Marseille's playing.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh
lads.
my gosh. Okay, go ahead, Sol. Sorry, I just had to say
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the most like elite, like, distributors that we've seen in the modern game have that moment in them. Like, distribution isn't going to be 100% all of the time. There's always going to be that one moment or a mistake that happens. I don't even think it's arrogance or egoness. I just think it's the risk that you take when you play out at the back, and it's the philosophy of high risk, high reward kind of football, and that's what we're doing. And sometimes it's going to pay off. Sometimes it's going to put you on the back foot, and But the only thing I will say is that how early it happened, it gave Crystal Palace an incentive to press him, which can work in your favour because that's what you want the team to do when you're doing these sort of things. But it can also kind of turn against you when you're constantly being pressed on the ball. But I've not really got an issue. I think his decision making will definitely improve because he's inexperienced at the minute. He's only 23. So the older he gets, the decisions will get better. He will figure the team out a little bit more, and because we are playing slightly differently to when he first came in. And yeah, I'm not really worried. I think it's just part of playing out at the back, really.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an eagerness from himself to impress, which is important, but there obviously has to be that balance. I think even in this interview about taking over the number 1 shirt, he said, I'm so happy to take it over. I want to put my own personality on it or something like that, my own twist on it, which is good. But I think he almost needs to curb that enthusiasm a little bit. It's important to also understand that sometimes.
Whose food is ready?
I don't know.
Somebody's microwave is going on for something.
Is it? Oh, I don't have a microwave. Wait, maybe it's mine.
Oh no, I heard somebody. Did you hear that, George? Or no?
I did.
It's a dishwasher. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was like, somebody's food is ready, but no, go ahead.
Sorry. Alexa, turn the dishwasher off. Alexa, it's done. I don't have Alexa. Yeah, so there's definitely a part of that from Ramsdale, which is a good thing, like Sol said. But sometimes you might need to manage that a little bit within the game. But look, a few of my friends say about Ramsdale that he gives them Pickford vibes. I think a lot of opposition fans will certainly pick up on his few passes that maybe don't hit the man or are a little bit risky, but that's the nature of the game, right? And I'd rather have that than I would say a Leno who is maybe a little bit more calmer and a little bit more, I don't know, composed, but can't play out from the back. It's imperative to how we play. It literally is. There was a time when he just hit it like 45 yards to Zinchenko, almost on Zinchenko's foot, and we started attack. There's a ball over the top to Martinelli, I think, in the second half. So, it's priceless having a goalkeeper that can do that. Literally priceless, especially for a team that presses so high, or for a team that turns those kind of 60% balls into 100% balls. So when you have Ramsdale playing a really long ball, which might not look amazing, if you've got Martinelli chasing it down or Jesus chasing it down, it turns it into a decent ball. So I'll take that from Ramsdale for sure. All I ask from Ramsdale this season is to maintain that composure and concentration, because I think last season, towards the end of the season, that kind of suffered a little bit.
I think a lot of that was injury. And again, he's, I don't think he ever recovered from that hip injury from March towards the end of the season. And really quickly, he's a baby in goalkeeper terms. And when you look at it, like you say, Harry, he's imperative. You don't get the Tottenham goal without Ramsdale being brave enough to do it. Was that something that was a second late? Sure. Granit Xhaka bailed him out a little bit, but you don't get goals like that without him attempting those passes. And you don't get us up the pitch. In fact, I'd argue a big reason why we fell off in the second half was us not spreading the pitch well enough. And, that early ball, once again, from Ramsdale to Kieran Tierney is what gets us out for that second goal. And bang, you're in on goal. So, but again, you're going to have to take the environment. If you ask somebody to be adventurous with the ball when everybody's telling you not to be, it's going to be nerve-wracking for fans. It's going to be nerve-wracking. He's going to get it wrong every once in a while. But I do think on the whole, his decisions are more 9 out of 10 right than they are wrong. Even if 10% of the time you're going to get howlers and you're going to get big mistakes. And he's the type of character that brings on that hate as well. I think rivals hate him, but he's a player that you love in your team because he's going to rile you up. He's going to give you the big one. And on top of it, he's going to say he's the best in the world, even if he isn't, but he's going to say it. And I love that mentality. So I'll never kind of hammer somebody for doing it, but I am with you, Jess. There should be a time when he chooses when to press and when not to. I just think that's experience. So when he does play those balls, learning when to really up the tempo is just what he has to iron out. But again, 23, baby terms for a goalkeeper.
So what's your hit, George? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think my hit this game, since you took Saliba, which is my big one, but my hit's got to be Granit Xhaka. Harry will love this. I think he was phenomenal. If you really look at the rewatch back there, he was one of the only midfielders for me that wasn't hiding. And, for a midfield that I felt at times had quite a bit of hot potato going, I think Granit Xhaka did phenomenally well, especially between the lines. And I think he did an excellent job in getting those duels correct, especially when Kieran Tierney came on. I think that really helped us control the game again when we kind of got it away from us quite a bit. I felt as though he was very important in making sure that the team played well in those first 35 minutes. He was very, very good between the lines. And I encourage people to kind of watch back because I feel as though my miss is somebody else that I think didn't play well in the middle of the park. I think Granit kind of bailed out the team quite a bit in that first 35 minutes, especially towards the end with winning balls that I think he had no right doing. I think it's a player that's much maligned. I still think we need to move on if we need to see the true show of this midfield ceiling wise. But, he had a phenomenal game individually. So you can't fault the guy.
You know what it is about Granite? And like, here's the thing: it's like, I think he's playing as good, like he's getting to his limits. Like he's showing us more of who he is. Like I think he's been limited a little bit, and now he's kind of pushing himself a little bit more. And I think most people know this, that when Granite first came into the team, he wasn't like a number 6. Like he was, when he first came to Arsenal, he was more box to box. Like, you know, he was trying to do more in attack. You know, he would shoot more and all that kind of stuff. And as time went on, like he kind of was pushed back into midfield. Now we're seeing a little bit more of him like trying to get forward and affect in attacking areas, which is great. And I think what he does really well is like there was one ball where I think he made a mistake and passed it away, and you could see he instantly ran back and he was actually made the defensive intervention. I thought defensively, especially in the second half, Granit Xhaka was very, very good. And in the first half, when we were kind of dominating things, he was in and amongst everything, trying to get into tight spaces and make things happen ahead of Thomas Partey. But I still have this sense of like, but could we do more in that position, like you said? And it's such a difficult conversation to have, because if you say anything about Granit that's not sometimes not positive, it's like you hate him. But at the same time, like I wouldn't want him to leave. Like I wouldn't want him to leave. You know, I would want just to add something a little bit different. I'm also interested in seeing, you know, what Vieira can do, but I do tend to agree that I think out of everybody in midfield, I thought he was the best. I thought he had a better game than Thomas Partey. I thought he had a better game than Martin Odegaard. And so you have to give him some credit there, because again, Selhurst Park is a very difficult place to go to. It's very difficult, you know, and if you don't have a midfield, you're done. You're finished. And so I think he held his own and he did a really good job. Souls, do you have anything to add on that, or do you want to just go to your hit?
No, I think you guys covered it, and it was one of the ones I was going to say, but I do have like a fourth one because I feel like all of them have been mentioned. And I'm going to say Martinelli. And the reason why I mention him is because that was a big miss. Like that, for a young player to miss like that, because that should have gone in. Let's be absolutely real. Like I'm not saying it's punishable, but that is like criminal to miss a chance like that. But you know what I liked was seconds after that happened, he was like, "Give me the ball." Like and that's the thing I want to see. I don't want players to shy away anymore, because I feel like we're past that. We don't have those players who are having breakout seasons anymore. And yeah, people can say, look, Martinelli may have not shown his true potential yet, but I feel like they've all had this moment where they've shown what they can do. They can only get better from now. I don't think there's a breakthrough for them. I think the only player who has that is maybe Saliba. He's the only one, in my opinion, who can have a breakthrough. So to see that, and for him to constantly demand, and then obviously get his goal as well, but it was just how much confidence he's playing with, how much things aren't bothering him anymore, and that's what I want to see. And it rubbed off as well, because a lot of the times we have these big misses, and it seems like we kind of fold into it and go into our shells again, and we don't keep pushing for that goal. And that's not what we seen yesterday. On Friday. It seemed like we were pushing and pushing and pushing, and we never lost hope that even though there's opportunities missed and we could have done better with them, we kept going. And that's interesting, especially at Selhurst Park. And I mean, first game of the season, Friday nights under the lights. I mean, Crystal Palace is annoying to go to anyway. And then they had the tifos, and they had to do it, you know, the fan flair with the Premier League, you know, first game of the season. And they had, you know, it was rocking. That could have easily been the same old Arsenal. One chance missed and we folded. So even though I've said Martinelli, it's a bit of a team mentality, but he's shown it the most in that game. So I want to give him his plaudits for that.
Yeah. Martinelli, I thought, had a really good game. I do think that because in certain parts of the game, especially early on in the second half, our attack was kind of on its own. We didn't really have a lot of attack going because the midfield wasn't really able to connect. I think we'll have a bigger conversation about why that happened. And so you didn't see as much of the attack as you wanted to see. If the ball is nowhere near them, there's nothing you can really do. But I thought on both sides of the ball, Saka and Martinelli were really good. Like defensively, they did their jobs. They tried to press. They tried to make things happen. And Martinelli seemed to shine, you know, a little bit more. And yeah, I think you're 100% right. Like sometimes you miss a big chance, and then that's kind of it for you. And Martinelli came back and did his thing, So um, yeah, love the kid. Think he's gonna have a big season. But let's move into the misses. I think the interesting thing about that, the best part about this game, which some people might find odd, is that I'm glad that we didn't look as good as we possibly could look, because I do think you want things to work on. Um, we were good, but there was definitely things that we could improve upon. So for me, it's like, okay, we know where we need to go because we've seen that this team can do better. But there were maybe some performances that were lackluster, maybe some ideas that didn't really come to fruition. So George, it looked like you had something that you already kind of had like, penned in for this. So if you want to go ahead and do your miss, that'd be awesome.
Souls is smiling because I think he knows what's going to
Yeah,
happen.
George, you were smiling before Jess even asked you the question. It's like you were like happy. It's like you're excited to do this part.
No,
To be fair, George, I was gonna say it, so I'll let you go.
no, you know what it is. Look, I get accused for having an agenda, but I think ultimately when you look at this game in terms of what was lacking, it was for me Martin Odegaard. I think he didn't show us what was different from last season. And I was the first person on Twitter saying I hope that he shows us that these away day narratives aren't true. I hope it's something a case of when he's in contact he can hold on to the ball. I hope in a case where we are facing a big physical midfield, he can release the ball quicker. Guys, the miss that he had was even worse on a rewatch. The space that he had. You see Kulusevski in much smaller, tighter spaces, receiving in kind of a similar position, putting that away. And it's not that Martin can't do these things. He can release quicker. He's shown it at times. And when he does, I actually love it. And, it's not only that his poor weak foot, I think, is on show. And when you look at it, he was a big reason for us saying no hot potato in the midfield. He was a big reason why, for me, Saka at times got criticized in this game because there was no fluidity down the right-hand side. And so a big reason is because Martin had to increase his technical control when he's in contact. People were hitting him. He didn't like it. He was starting to ghost a bit. I think if you look at the first half, by the way, he was the player on the outfield that had the least touches. Guys, that's kind of ridiculous when you consider Aaron Ramsdale is in goal, and that includes him. Like that's not okay for in an away day, somebody that's supposed to be your orchestrator. Like we can't have that in away days. And I found myself yelling to have an Eddie and Kedia come on to move Jesus outside and have Saka come inside and receive. Like I felt there was no thrust on the right hand side. And Ben got killed for a lot of his on the ball, but he was the only one along with Saka for me that offered some kind of presence in the middle, but also width. And I just feel as though this isn't, to say that Martin can never get there. But again, these same concerns that I have, where can he sustain contact and be secure? I don't know. Can he have a weak foot? I don't know. Can he release a lot sooner? And it's not just a goal chance, by the way, guys. In the middle of the first half, around the 25th mark, there's a beautiful break in play when he has an opportunity at the top of the box to take a shot. And he doesn't. And, and it's not to say that he doesn't have the technique. I think that's what frustrates me the most as a coach, because I see somebody with this unbelievable technique where I feel he can do these things that I ask. I'm not asking him to be a physical presence. I'm not asking him to go and win second balls. It's not a game that I think he can't do, but we've seen it and we haven't seen it consistently enough in these away days. So I think that's a big reason also for our drop off, by the way, when we had a really strong 20, 30 minutes when he's engaging in the press and the team's doing well. I'm just afraid Martin does well when the team does well. And when the team doesn't do well, he doesn't do well. And that's okay. But when you ask somebody to be your main creator in that middle of the park, you need him to sometimes take the scruff of the neck in away days. Now, does that happen at home? Not as much. I see a lot of the things I demand. So I know it's in him. I just hope that we can get that. And by the way, I think we have a player, and I've said it before, that answers a lot of those weaknesses that Martin Odegaard has. So I think with competition, the really big question mark we have is, do we see this change from Martin, or do we see Fabio Vieira come in? Because for me, he's a player that's more complete, that doesn't have some of these weaknesses.
Yeah, Odegaard was, to me, like such. I hate to say like disappointment, but I think it's because it depends on how you make it there. But for me, I think he has so much talent, but ultimately, like in that position, especially because Thomas Partey and Xhaka, if they're going to start, which I think a lot of games they will, they're not going to give you very many goals. I think between the two of them, you may get 3-4 goals max. So that player, that
And some
last
red cards
midfield
as well.
position has got to have goals in it. And it was twofold. Like George said, it was not just the fact that there was two wide open opportunities for him to shoot and he just wouldn't. It was like, I am not going to shoot. I need to walk it into the goal type nonsense. But then it was just the fact that like he couldn't get into the game. And Vieira's team is very physical. Like that's a part of their game. Like they're not just power and pace merchants or whatever, but they do get stuck in. Like they really do. And I think when it comes down to it, you have three like really active midfielders for Palace, then you need to have three active midfielders for Arsenal. And I felt like we were kind of a man down in midfield. I think Xhaka and Thomas Partey had to do a lot more defensive work than they needed to because there was no link between the midfield and the attack. There just wasn't anything there. And one of our biggest roots is Thomas Partey to Martin Odegaard. And I just don't think that was there because Odegaard was kind of like on the outskirts. He wasn't really central. And one thing about Palace is that they like to flood the flanks. They are very active on the flanks. So there's a lot of space central, but in order to access that, you have to be willing to take the ball. And I don't think that he was. Like, I just felt like he was very much like, this is a game where I'm going to not, be able to get on the ball. He got smashed one time by Decore, and that was kind of it for me. Like, after he got smashed that one time, he just kind of was like out. I will say that Odegaard was active defensively, like he was trying, but even his tackles, like, they were just running all over him. So I think you're 100% right. He was a huge miss. And because of that, we kind of struggled to connect. But we need to bring in players, or maybe Vieira could be somebody that could light a fire under his ass. Like there needs to be something else there so we don't feel like we have to rely upon him. And maybe even Emil Smith-Rowe. A lot of people feel like Emil Smith-Rowe can do that. And I think what Emil does that Odegaard doesn't is he can receive in central areas and progress the ball without passing. It's more of like his dribbling skill to try to like get free. And Odegaard just really struggled. Like we kind of know him to, which was really disappointing. Souls or Harry, do you have anything else to add on to that? Or
No, I mean, my miss was going to be Odegaard as well. Sorry to do a spoiler alert. And I actually did struggle for misses for this game because I'm just taking into consideration that it's the first game of the season. But kind of a second miss for me was not the system so much, but with Arteta, we're so focused on the individual positions that there isn't that sometimes that ability to move. And I do think if Odegaard, so like what George said, he wasn't receiving for the ball, he wasn't showing for the ball. There were some times in games with Ozil when it wasn't really his day, and you would see Ozil just pop up in all kind of random positions on the pitch, sometimes almost like next to Monreal, sometimes next to Bellerin, like really, really deep, just to get on the ball, to give himself a feel of the ball and to get himself involved. It doesn't feel like the players can do that in Arteta's system, right? You don't see wingers swap wings. You don't really see, apart from Lacazette, you're not going to see Gabriel Jesus, I don't believe, come really, really deep. And you're always going to see Odegaard fix that right-hand side. I do feel like if he said, you know what, I'm just going to go get the ball off Zinchenko and I'm going to get it and I'm going to move it and I'm going to get it again and just get a feel for the ball. I do think he could have influenced the game a little bit more. But like you say, the longer the game went on, the more it hid. And I know we were talking during the game and you guys were saying about substitutions. And I was thinking, this feels like a game we're just going to try to ride out for the 1 or 2-0. And I kind of understand why Arteta kept him on because, like you say, he does tick the boxes defensively. So whilst he's having a bad game, he's still doing all the other right things when we don't have the ball. So I feel a little bit sorry for him in that respect. But then I do appreciate that essentially he did have a poor game. And like we also said on the group about those repetitions, and it is literally Partey to Odegaard to Saka. And if the first one doesn't happen, Partey to Odegaard, then Saka is almost void and he's not going to get the ball. And it's really that simple. We're a team based on system and routines and movement. And if those things aren't working well, certain players will see less of the ball. Another thing I took from the game, whilst Jesus had an absolutely incredible debut, there is a tendency for him to get the ball. And as soon as it hits his feet, it's a turn and do a Cruyff and try and spin away. I do feel like at sometimes he should literally arm at the back of the defender, hold the ball, and then bring other players into play. I do think that's one thing I took from the game. When our backs were against the wall, I would have liked the ball to stick a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I would have liked us to use the ball wiser. There were a few times we went for these big diagonals, and I get why we do it because the counter-attack is on. But we were so starved on consistent possession in the second half. I would have loved for our midfielders to show a little bit more and try to get on the ball. But I appreciate if Erdegaard and Partey aren't having the best of games, then defenders might look for that quick through ball. So yeah, so there's kind of my misses. A lack of like tactical flexibility, a lack of like position and fluidity in terms of where players can move to, and then just a little tweak from Jesus, I believe, when our backs were against the ball, just to try to keep the ball a little bit more.
Souls, what is your miss?
I just wanted to say an Odegaard. I think for me, it's not so much he's not shooting, it's the fact that it's become predictable what he's going to do, and what he likes to do is disguise a shot into a pass, and I feel like people have clocked onto that. It happens again and again and again. So and I think what he needs to do is sometimes in a game just shoot for the sake of shooting, so that it puts the defenders off if you're going to do that. But in terms of my miss, it's actually really difficult because me and Harry have got the same mentality going into this game. It's the first game of the season, so
Oh, who's that? Oh my gosh, he went away. Oh my gosh. So we're gonna skip Souls. He misses his turn. Because we have to move
So
forward.
just on that Erdegaard chance, don't you think like it's so as soon as he takes that first touch, right, the defender is there. So I understand
Didn't need to take a touch. He didn't need to take a touch.
Yeah,
that's the thing is when I rewatched it back, I thought if he would just not be afraid to use his right foot, he could have just banged that in the back of the net. Like that's the one I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
like and I think he could have just hit it.
I think it's worse when you watch back. I'm not gonna.
I mean, I've watched it like 4 times. I feel like the angle of the pass. Yeah, maybe so. I think it's one of those things where I need to see him take it with his right foot to believe he could have hit it with his right foot. I feel like once he took the first chance, that was the right thing to do because I think the defender was there.
What I'll say about that as well is like at that moment when that happened, I do think like if we put the ball in the back of the net, the game's done. And because we don't do that, like against like we were obviously getting a lot of pressure from Crystal Palace, and that's going to happen away from home at difficult away grounds. But when you get a chance, like you have to put it away so that you can alleviate that pressure. And so we had to withstand
100%.
more pressure because of that. Like not just because of him, but because we're not putting away those odd chances. And like we just the good teams have players that can turn half chances into goals, and if he's not able to do that, and it kind of has to be if like it can't be 100% all the time like a pass in the back of the net. He's got to be able to make some of these half chances into full chances, and sometimes it's just because he doesn't shoot. Sometimes it ricochets in, sometimes it's the goalkeeper saves it and it comes out and then somebody can tap it in. I just feel like we lose out on a lot of those opportunities, second chances and stuff like that, because we literally just will not shoot. We won't shoot. And it's not even just him. Like I saw xhaka one time in the box, wouldn't shoot, passed it out wide to Zinchenko. Why? Like you're in the middle of the goal. I think overall this team needs to shoot more, but especially the 110 that we have out there, because xhaka and Partey are not going to get us any goals this season.
Well, I think there's that, but also, Harry, you kind of briefly touched on it, but the biggest reason why we suffered is because we allowed Crystal Palace to run. They're a big team. When you allow them to open their legs, it's a very big, difficult time to kind of stop them. Okay, so they're definitely a big space team. But I think some of the things that you critique Odegaard for aren't big space things related. When you're releasing earlier, when you're making sure to use your weak foot, when you're making sure to kind of ride the contact a little bit more, those aren't big spaces. Those are things that you can do in small spaces that he wasn't doing. But part of the issue was I feel the team lacked its width. I think Zinchenko got very tired towards the second half. I think the team was calling out for earlier subs. I was really upset with Mikel for not doing it around the 65th to the 75th minute because it was very clear we weren't spreading the game wide enough and quick enough. So when you talk about those switches, Harry, I don't think that we were doing it enough in that second half. And I actually don't think that the team spread. We kind of collapsed in a little bit on itself, both on and off the ball. And we needed those subs with Eddie to come on, let the ball stick a little bit. And I was kind of calling for that in addition to Kieran so we could, get width, but also add some more technical security deeper. That's what the team was crying out for. So even if Martin was struggling there, we needed somebody else to do it. And people weren't doing that. So I think Mikel has to be a little bit smarter in terms of his substitutions, recognizing those things, because for me, as a coach, I'll look at it and I'll say, I'll give a team talk. And if the team doesn't change in 20 minutes, I'm going to make a change. That's kind of my philosophy. I'll give them a chance to go, but if they don't do it, they have to change. But for me to make a sub around the 81st or 82nd minute, whenever it was, I
It's
can't,
too
don't quote
long.
me, but yeah, it was too late. It
Yeah.
was too late for me. And immediately, Kieran, he fixes it. He offers the width
Yeah.
with the corner, and boom, you get a goal because Eddie is coming deep with that security and laying it off. So yeah, that was probably the biggest thing that I felt the game got away from us with.
Yeah. I do want to move on to my miss because it does piggyback off of this, but my miss is the idea that because Zinchenko came from Manchester City and he's the new shiny thing, that Kieran Tierney has no value and he's no longer a quality player. I saw after maybe the first half people calling for Kieran Tierney to come on. And that's really the thing, is that all the players that are out right now are being underrated and I think treated unfairly. Like, I don't love it. I do think Kieran Tierney needs to stay fit, but what Zinchenko allows you to do is not have to play Kieran Tierney into the ground. It's somebody that Arteta trusts. He has a good technical quality about him, but he was getting bullied. Like, he was getting bullied defensively. Like, he was the opposite of Ben White. Ben White was amazing defensively, but shaky on the ball. Zinchenko was good on the ball, especially in the first half, but defensively, he was getting skinned. And I just think there's going to be times at home when we have a lot of the ball where Zinchenko is going to be absolutely phenomenal. But then there's going to be away days where teams are going to get stuck into us, where we're going to need a little bit of Kieran Tierney. And I know, and George probably feels the exact same way, is that Kieran Tierney is being treated so badly by this fan base. Like, over the summer, like, it's just been you sell him, get rid, da 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 da.
It's disrespectful for a fullback that, let's have it right. They all have their strengths and their weaknesses, right? But you're talking about a fullback, maybe the October to maybe March period was doing 1 to 2 big chances per game. That's madness. From an offensive fullback standpoint, there isn't much better in the final third than Kieran Tierney. And some of the stuff I was seeing was that he's a bad final third player. And I was shocked. I think the biggest thing that fans to get comfortable with, by the way, is purely the fact that we're going to have a better squad. And so different profiles doesn't mean that you get to hammer the opposite person in the other position. There's going to be games for both. We need to accept that a better squad is really the way to advance the team. And that doesn't mean that you have to choose team Zinchenko, team Kieran Tierney. And we can talk honestly about their pros and cons. But yeah, I love the fact that KT's back. And I think he's a big, big miss if he's not in the squad. He offers us things that Zinchenko doesn't, and Zinchenko offers us things that Kieran doesn't. It's really that simple. I think they're mutually exclusive. You don't have to hammer one to love the other.
Yeah, 100%. And again, like, I love Zinchenko. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I think he's going to be really, really good for us. But again, because I highlighted the fact that he got skinned, people are saying I hate him. I just feel like we just remove context and nuance from all conversations. And it's like, okay, so you love Kieran Tierney, but you hate Zinchenko. I actually love them both, but I did not like the conversations around Kieran Tierney this summer, that they were equating his like lack of fitness to quality, and like, that's not what it is. You know, he needs to play at least 10 to 15 games less a season. That's the reality. Like, and most of the good players on City, they don't play more than 25, 26, 27 games. Like, you know, you can't expect him to play every single game. And so Zinchenko allows you to do that, but I think Kieran Tierney gave us that solidity, like you said, and we were able to finish out that game really well.
The aggression as well, right? Tierney came on and he won that first header almost quite aggressively, and he gives you that as well, which Zinchenko possibly doesn't have. I don't think Zinchenko's amazing in the air. I think Tierney's obviously stronger in that department as well. But I think for some Arsenal fans, there's obviously frustration from last season in terms of not making top four because of key players getting injured. So it's more about having a shiny new toy that doesn't have an injury history. I think it's worth noting as well that Zinchenko at Man City is going to have a slightly different role at Zinchenko at Arsenal, and he'll be expected to defend a little bit more because we don't keep the ball as well as Man City, and we won't be dominating teams as well as Man City did. So he has to be switched on defensively. There were a few times where I thought his positioning was really, really poor. I don't think he was aware sometimes of the overlap of Klein, even though Klein's an average player. There are a few times when I just think Zinchenko wasn't positionally aware. So hopefully improves that as time goes on. And this is where we want to be, right? We want to have 2 strong players in almost every position. So we should embrace it, and we should make sure that the player who isn't playing is still feeling valued. Because as we've seen in the documentary, it's important, and players do read things, they do listen. So it's important the energy around players is right. And I think to have 2 good fullbacks is really, really good. And if Kieran Tierney can stay fit because Zinchenko is now here, then we're in a much, much better place.
100%. There's 360 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're actually going to go into our hits and misses of game week 1. We're going to kind of fly through these a little bit more because I know you guys have to get out of here at some point. But we watched the games, we watched the highlights. Everybody's played. I think it's been interesting. It's been interesting. So, Souls, if you want to start off with maybe start off with your hit for game week 1.
I'm gonna because I had 2 in mind, but I'm gonna go with the more not outlandish one, but I'm gonna go with Fulham. Obviously we know what Marco Silva's team brings to the Premier League. We've seen it before, but I felt the way they were organised, the way they were pressing, the preparation into it. Now we got absolutely slaughtered last season for being underprepared for the season and not having our players, injuries, COVID, whatever. Every little metric that they could criticize, they did. And coming against Liverpool isn't an easy team. The way they press, they're relentless, their mentality. Losing out to the Premier League once again within a few points, and obviously losing the Champions League and only coming away with the FA Cup. And I say that with with respect, like they only came away with the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup after saying they're going to win the quadruple. To go, because Liverpool have a point to prove, I feel, this season, that they're not just this one trophy-winning team and that they need to start off well. And if you're going to keep up with Man City especially, you've got to come off like firing straight away. And Fulham didn't take any of that. They bullied them, they pressed them, they man-to-man, they looked just as good. Actually, they looked like the team that was competing for the title, not the other way around. And the way that, sort of Mitrovic handled Jordan Henderson, that they handled, Van Dijk, is credit to him. Like, credit to firstly to the team, but also for Silva and going into this game very well prepared. And I'd say for about 60 to 70 minutes, or whenever Nunes came on, up until that point, Salah didn't even have any joy. I was like, oh, the worst thing I've done is captained him from FPL. And then Trent was getting bullied time and time again. And Van Dijk was getting bullied by Mitrovic, the way he drew the penalty out as well. So credit to just Fulham. Like, that's my hit, is Fulham, because as much as I want to say just Mitrovic, I feel like there were other players in there. I think is it Lavina or something?
Mm-hmm.
It was him, even when you look at Bobby Reed, when you look at who's the other winger now on the other side?
Tete played well. Jedi Robinson played really well. Yeah, everybody played well for them, really.
And it was like electrifying. Like, it was like, for a promoted side, they never really get off to the best of starts. Like, we've seen that
against Arsenal.
Yeah, unless it's against Well, to be fair, Fulham, we did beat them 5-1, but like normally, like, they don't tend to do that well, especially against, like, Liverpool tend to pull it out. Like when they played, Leeds, when they got promoted, that ended up being 3-2. It was 1-0, 1-1, 2-0, 2-1, sorry, 2, and then they ended up winning. So the fact they didn't collapse completely is credit to them. So yeah, I just think Fulham for me have to get it this week.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I think Fulham came with the right type of intensity to play against Liverpool, and you have to match their intensity in order to get the right to play, and they definitely did that. I'm going to go with Brighton as my hit. Beyond the whole, I know we're going to talk about Manchester United, but I just want to give Brighton their actual due praise. Like, this is a team that I feel like a lot of people felt like, because they didn't have Basuma or Cucurella, that it was going to fall apart. But Brighton have been selling players for years. And Graham Potter has them playing a way of football that's like, I think he can plug and play. The system kind of remains the same. The players kind of are. What I like about Brighton is that no matter who they're playing, they have the confidence to play. You never really see them sit back in a low block and just kind of like defend for their lives. They still play their way. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think they have a pretty good, track record against the top teams. They haven't had a striker. I still think it's shocking that they haven't really bought one. Welbeck played really well today, and I thought he was excellent today. Like man of the match performance. I don't think he got it because Gross scored 2 goals, but man of the match performance, but I still think they need a striker, to really capitalize on some of those chances that they create. But I just find them very fun to watch. And Caicedo, like he's gonna be probably better than Basuma. To me, I think he's gonna be better than Basuma. I thought that guy was just like he was all over the place. He was eating Manchester United alive. And you could just see like their recruitment is good. They've made 110 million off of Ben White and Kukureya's sales, and they still like a team that's going to be very difficult for the top teams to beat. So for me, Brighton is my hit for game week 1. George?
Yeah, no, I like Brighton. I love Graham Potter. I think he's one of my favorite coaches in the division. And you were talking about how good they are in possession, but also something that goes under the radar. They have probably one of the nastiest mid blocks in the league. You can't get through when they do sit in. We've seen it. Top 6 teams have seen it. And this isn't new from them. So I never really worried, even with the Cucurella sale, like what they're doing, getting Colwell in on a loan, who by the way, arguably is the better left center back of the two, but that's a discussion for another day. It's incredible business what they continue to do. And they're really a kind of fixture along with Dan Ashworth, which leads into my next pro, which is Newcastle. They're my hit of game week 1. I sat down and I watched that game, and it was quite good. I think a lot of people get onto Eddie Howe for being a manager that maybe doesn't deserve that project, but what he's been able to do in terms of getting them to play a really attractive brand of football is something that I saw at Bournemouth, but I've been even more impressed under the spotlight. He's been able to continue with bigger and better names. And I think Newcastle look very, very strong. Something that people don't realize, since January, they've been a top 3, top 4 team by metrics. They've been absolutely incredible, not just today, yesterday, not just, the last couple of weeks before the season ended. Since January, they've been phenomenal. So I think looking back at them, Callum Wilson is a dangerous player who doesn't get the plaudits. I think he's one of the most underrated strikers in the league. When he gets going, that's somebody that can score you goals. And I think that team is looking very interesting. You have your guy, Jess Bruno, who was running the show on the day of. But I think the biggest positive that I was looking there is the team looked very coherent in terms of how they were playing. They were moving the ball really well as a team. It wasn't just that at the back. And when you look at it, you add Botman to that. You add a couple more pieces. I think they could do a little bit better on the right, if I'm being honest. I think right wing is something, Pepe, maybe. But no, I kid. I don't want to anger too many people in the comments. But I think you add 1 or 2 pieces to that Newcastle team. It's not just hype for me. Like, they deserve to be challenging for European places. A lot of people have them up with Palace at the 2 teams outside the top 6 to really do something this season. And I just want to say, I don't think that's by chance. They've been doing it since January. So, yeah. Big kudos to Newcastle against a Forest team that, like you said, Jess, Alex Moreno, now their 13th signing this season. It looked incoherent. Let's put it that way. They had a lot of really good moments, but not put together, which is emblematic of their business.
100%. Harry?
I mean, I had a few. I thought, from a player perspective, I hate to compliment anything to do with Spurs, but I thought Kulusevski looks really, really good again. I think he's been a game changer of a signing for Spurs. And yeah, I thought against Southampton, he looked wonderful. He's a really good player, unfortunately. He's a really good player. And I think
Did we make a mistake not getting him? Like, I have to ask. Because isn't he the exact player that we're looking for now?
But it's so hard because you've got Saka that plays there. So what do? You're going to hamper Saka's development. But I get it. It's a fair question. He's a really good player. You have to ask yourself, if we went out to Kulusevski and said to him, hey, we want to sign you, and he says to Arteta, cool, I'm interested, but am I going to start? Arteta's going to say, well, maybe, but we've got Saka, whereas Spurs can guarantee him a starting place.
He plays across the entire front three. I look at it.
I know he does, but he's incredibly successful on the right-hand side. So Spurs have done really well there because they had Son and Kane for a number of years, and their right-hand side has always been a little bit iffy with Moura, and it hasn't really worked. And now they've got, annoyingly, a really good front three. But I don't want to compliment Kulusevski, so let's not even talk about it anymore. I thought Mitrovic was wonderful. I like watching Mitrovic because he's just big and he's slow, but he's not slow. And he doesn't have any technical security, but he does. and it's just all a little bit old school. But I thought he gave a really impressive debut, and I also really enjoyed Leeds' performance at home. I think
Jesse
what
Marsh.
you get, yeah, and it's really hard because I have a weird love-hate thing for Leeds, and I don't know why that is. I do feel like they could get dragged into some sort of battle, but I feel like they've got too good of a coach and too good of a spirit to.
Bamford, it's fine.
They're not good. They're not going to be in the bottom three.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that game. And you know, when you watch Leeds, there's always going to be goals. You're going to be entertained. I think it's Aronson. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
I thought he looked really good. I was very close to putting him in my fantasy dream team as well, so I was quite annoyed. But yeah, quite a few hits for game day one, and one main miss, which I'm sure we'll go on to.
All right, let's get into it. Let's get into the misses. This is where it gets fun, you guys, because it's not going to be us because we won. Yeah, so there you go. But I think I'll let George go first on this one. What is your miss for game week 1?
I don't want to steal everyone's, but it's got to be United, but more specifically Lisandro Martinez. I've said quite a little bit on group chats the amount of rivals that have been trying to give stick and ridiculously about what kind of player they're getting. I find quite utterly hilarious. What you've seen right now is a little preview of what every single team in the league is going to do, and they're going to isolate Lisandro Martinez, just like how Danny Welbeck did today. And it wasn't just the fact that United were poor as an entirety. Lisandro was particularly poor, and I can't even blame him because I've said this in group chats. I think individually the player quality is excellent. We could have used him, but we could have used him the way we wanted to use him, not the way that United want to use them. And having used him kind of in the back there, it's a very different zone to having him as an inverted fullback. And all of the crap that rivals were saying, is he a defender, specifically a center back versus a left back? I think you're going to see a lot of the differences in the Premier League, why you can't play that way. Ivan Toney's, Brentford's next. You best believe Ivan Toney is moving, sitting on Lisandro Martinez and saying, hit me, mismatch. That mismatch being right there. And, you can just predict it. And it's not even the fact that I think Martinez deserves it because he's got superior quality on the ball. You could see it in the few little aspects here, but he's not going to get a chance to show it. But that doesn't matter. I don't have to be balanced for a rival. So, yeah, I think Martinez is definitely my biggest miss, but United as a whole, like that was poor. They are us in 2019. All of these issues are going to be very predictable. Like Harry said, it's not fair on Ten Hag, but fundamentally that team is in need of such rebuilds. And by the way, their transfer window isn't as great as what people are saying. I really think that there needs to be some questions asked about leaving it this late to get a player that they believe is going to be so important and not fixing other areas of the squad. They still haven't fixed a right back. They still haven't fixed a really good right wing. They still haven't fixed the middle of the park. Where's their anchor that they've been asking for so long?
They went in for Arnautovic. They're in for Arnautovic this evening. They put a bid in for Arnautovic.
I do feel like there's kind of like a wanting to get your number one target, but also knowing when to say, know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Sometimes you have to move on a little bit quicker, and now they've left it late and they need a striker because here's the thing is like people were talking about Mikel Arteta and all this stuff happening with us, and they have a very identical kind of situation going on with Cristiano Ronaldo, where it's a disruption to the group. It's a very important player that you don't actually have anybody else, so when things don't go right, you have to kind of revert back to that old faithful, but old faithful don't like you. Old faithful is not feeling you and wants to leave. And so those things, like when they rear their ugly heads, can be really disruptive. And when it happens at the beginning of the season or in the middle of the season, it could just really mess you up. So, I'm looking at it like, wow, we were trying to, I think, speaking to United fans, I do think that they have a hard time coming to grips with the fact that they are like Arsenal when we began with Mikel Arteta, with a lot of players that need to be moved on. A new philosophy needs to be brought in, and until you completely gut it and start over, it's going to be really difficult. But I think seeing it in true color today is a big wake up call, because I do think they thought, okay, we're just going to buy a couple of players and it's just going to click. It's going to be fine. Bruno Fernandes was an absolute joke today. Like, he was so bad. Like, it was actually like, okay, so you're just going to be the same player that you were last season. And the only bright spot, if you can even like put one out there, might have been Eriksen because I thought he was okay. But beyond that, it was rough. And so for me, like similar to you guys, like the misses, new era for Manchester United. I mean, Ten Hag was out here talking about Klopp and Pep's eras were going to end. And I think those are big words for somebody that has to be looking at his squad like this thing needs to be gutted.
But Jesse,
You
he's
know?
going to have to battle with the old guard. Like we did it as well. I don't think United fans want to hear it because it's advice coming from a major rival. But fundamentally, we've seen this story. We've acted this story. I don't think that squad and that manager and that team can really express themselves until that guard has moved on. And that's going to take a lot of pain. It's going to take a lot of friction. And I just hope that they give the man the patience that he deserves because he does deserve it. He's a coach that's got one of the best pressing schemes in the world that I've seen. He's a very modern coach, but he's gonna need time. And I don't know if the players that he has can express his football right now. It's gonna take at least 18 months, in my opinion. It depends on how fast they can move on players, but there's about 5 to 6 really present starters that are old guard that people love that are gonna have to be moved on. And I just don't know if the fan base has the patience for that. De Gea is one of the top names on that target. I think he's emblematic of the change that they're really going to have to see. Ironically facing Robert Sanchez, who's a keeper in the mold that they might want to look for, but they just gave De Gea a massive contract. Like, are they willing to make the tough decisions? I think he can, but the board isn't going to back him because for whatever you want to say, ultimately, we have backed the decision making of this process as much as people want to make fun of it. Will he get the same patience, and will the fans give that team the patience it deserves? I don't know.
The one thing I will say is that there are quite a bit of Manchester United fans in the comment section right now, which is amazing. Thank you. Make sure you like the video before you leave. But all the things about, oh, you guys are just hating on Martinez because you didn't get him. First of all, you should have known rivals were going to banter you guys regardless. Like the first time Tyrion Lannister got dunked on, we were going to laugh at it. And I think he was okay today, but he wasn't amazing. So like, let's not act like he had like a great debut. It was very average. Defensively, he was meh. On the ball, he was okay. Like he should have conceded a penalty. Like keep it 100. But these are the same United fans that were laughing at Nunez because they didn't get him. There was a lot of the compilations, fail comps that were coming out about Darwin Nunez were from Manchester United fans. So the rules are the rules are the rules are the rules. We may have wanted Lisandro Martinez, but the moment that guy gets dunked on, we're coming.
This is
And
the
you just
game,
have to
y'all.
suck
This
it
is the
up. This
game.
is,
This is
yeah,
the game.
don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling you. So, but make
Do
sure
you
you
know
guys
what
like the video on the way.
with Martinez? Like, I think part of me is like, well, you signed him because you didn't want us to sign him. A little bit like Chelsea with Cucurella at Man City, right? So you went big on a player because you didn't want a rival to have him. Then I think it's about how you use him, and using him in a back four is not it, in my opinion. Using him as a centre back isn't it. But then you've also signed a backup left back for sure. So now you've got Martinez, who you have to try to find a place for. I don't believe long term it's in a two as a centre back. But then you've also got Varane sitting on the bench. I'm not sure if Varane was injured, so if he was, or if he was a little bit doubtful. So then you've signed a new player, but you've also inherited a new problem as in terms of what do you do with Martinez? What do you do with Varane? And then you've got Maguire, who's your captain. So he's starting. So now what do you do with Maguire? And then, so you just have to be careful. I do appreciate that if Man United can't get their top targets in De Jong and whoever else it is, then you just make these signings because they're the signings you're going to make further down the line, but you just make them earlier because those deals are ready to be done. But yeah, I do think they've signed good players, but not essentially what they need. And even if you look at someone like Eriksen, who's a really good player, I believe as he gets older, as he is now, he'll start to play deeper and deeper and deeper. So then you need someone next to him with some legs. And I don't know who that is in McTominay and Fred. And then then if it's not deeper, then you need to play him higher. But then where do you play Fernandes? So I think there's a few problems with Man United's team. I'm still unsure on Sancho. Sorry, like I'm just unsure on him. I know he's a good player. I know he can look good. I know he can finish moves, but I don't know if he's got it about him for the Premier League. And then there's obviously
Donny van der Beek.
Yeah.
Come on.
So
Three managers haven't picked him.
Yeah, expect a lot of contract terminations over the next few years. Expect it. And I think, like George said, this is certainly me not mocking Man United, and there's well-known Man United fans like Terry who are really understanding of the situation at Man United. But you just need to, I think you need to appreciate where you are and that Ten Hag has a big job on his hands, and there's two ways you can be. You can be patient and trust the process, but appreciate that process will take time, or you can start fights in the crowd amongst yourself and get really upset because you've lost home to Brighton. It's not about players.
Which
it's
they did, by the way.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. It's not about players. It's not about personnel. It's about system. How long you've been playing that system for, as Brighton proved today. And I think Man United, if they approach the games the same way they did today, I think they'll lose a lot of games this season. A lot of games, because there's teams who are just well drilled and similar to us who just know how to stop a team like Man United. And I think it could be a long season for Man United. But like with anything, if they make some good signings and things click into place sooner than expected, suddenly players who are out of the fold, who are low on confidence, i.e. Rashford, i.e. Van der Beek, it all changes, and it could change just like that. So you never know, but I do think it's going to be a tough season for Man United, which is ironically probably why I see them finishing outside the top 6 and most likely eighth place, and it will be us that are bantering them for finishing 8th.
There's still people in the chat that are like, oh, well, it's just one game. Well, Brentford was only one game as well, and we still finished 11 points in front of you. So it's for me, it's just like Manchester United fans would really have to like just relax. Like, we get it's one game, but like it was also all of last season, and you look very similar to that. So
You know what
yeah,
it is?
but
Yes, it's like I don't understand the logic. Okay, fine, you want Frankie De Jong, but what's wrong with a Fabian Ruiz at 17 million pounds? What's wrong with an Yves Bissouma? What's wrong with a Cheek Doucouré? What's wrong with these deals that immediately are 15 million pounds, 20 million pounds that don't hurt your top line, that you can do to fix holes? Like, there are smart ways, and it's kind of the criticisms we had of early Arteta, whether or not there was proper fund allocation. We've had many summers when we've had Mikel, right? And I just find that a lot of these conversations are going to be circular to what we experienced back in 2019. And I think you have a blueprint for what was successful and what wasn't on a very recent big team rebuild that I think you should look at, regardless of whether or not you agree with the decisions, as pros and cons for where you can take jumps and what worked and what didn't work. And I don't think I see that enough. And I just think I see too much of fans thinking what we were in the past, not recognizing what you are in the present.
100%. We're gonna keep moving forward because we only got one more section to go, but I know I only have you guys for a certain amount of time. But just pivoting away from game week 1, which was amazing, and looking forward to game week 2. We play Leicester. I think we could win that game. And there's some tough fixtures ahead for some other of our rivals, so we'll see what happens there. But really quickly, All or Nothing. Watched the first 3 episodes. Thought it was great. I was having a hard time rewatching just those first kind of games, just feeling it over again. It was like, oh my gosh, especially because we're about to start the season. I was like, please don't let it be the same. But ultimately, there's a lot of really good insight to what the players are like and what Arteta is like behind the scenes. And so I saw a lot of the same tweet kind of coming out. I put out a very similar tweet that there's a lot of narratives out there around Arteta, around the team, around how they feel about him, around all this kind of stuff that don't seem to be the truth when you're actually watching what's going on. And so we were having a conversation in our group chat around, narratives being debunked, with Arsenal, because we talk a lot of shit, but like we don't really know what's going on, right? Because we're just looking from the outside, reading what journalists are putting out there, and you know what I mean. So it's interesting to see what's really what. So I kind of tasked you guys with all kind of thinking of like narratives that were debunked for you or whatever, and we could just kind of go around in a circle and share with the class. I'll go with George first.
Yeah, so really quickly, I think this idea that Mikel asks the players to sit back and he instructs the team to sit back. Like, every team talk that he gave was about intensity and making sure to be on the front foot. And when you look at it, it's very clear that's not something he values. I always defended that it was never something he did. It was just more so the experience of the team, and I think some players not being brave enough to carry out those tactics. But it's really quite clear. Go back to Leicester. Go back even to Everton, by the way, when like the entire team talk was basically, I'm afraid about saying something that I'll regret, so I'm going to leave. I mean, the reaction isn't here in the dressing room. It's what you do outside. And it was very clear that halftime tea talk was separated on pressing, going high, and the team didn't do it. So I just think the major narrative that Mikel likes to sit into a block was definitely not true. You know, and I kind of am similar with Harry that I love Aaron Ramsdale. I felt I had this big debate wanting him to be captain and whether a goalkeeper should be your captain. I sit there and I watch All or Nothing. He's one of the new leaders of that team. Absolutely. You know, when you look at Liverpool, the only one that looked up and said, head up, we go again. You see that row where basically Cedric, Saka, ESR are all laying down, heads down, and you see him speak up, and I love it. And also, sorry, really quickly, and maybe I'm stealing something else, is that the young players look young. I know that's not groundbreaking analysis, but Smith Rowe is shy. Saka is shy. Like when you're looking at it, like these boys, like I know they carry us, but they are so shy in terms of how they carry themselves. And I just think we get a reminder for maybe some of the human aspects, Cough, Nuno. I'll let somebody else chew on that. But how difficulties happen during the season, we know maybe a slimmer of, you know, of where the actual problems lie. So yeah, that was my favorite hit, you know, of it.
Souls?
George, you stole it. But I want to give two because they kind of interlink with each other. I want to give a big shout out to Carlos Cuesta because I think he surprised a lot of people actually for his age, his maturity, the way that you can tell he's a young Arteta in a sense, not tactically in anything because we've not really seen that side to him, but the way he can sort of emotionally connect with the players and get them feeling comfortable, but also kind of give them a bit of a harsh truth, but in a nice way that, you know, we are in a competitive sport, you know, how is life outside of football and being able to do that, but also be within the age profile. It's such a weird thing, but he's 25. And if you look at the average age of the squad, it's around that kind of age. And he can connect with them. You know, he understands that. Even when you look at his sort of, you know, CV in football, you know, I know he's got a pro license and everything, but he's been at Juventus, he's been at Atletico Madrid, and he's only 25. So I want to give him big credits because I didn't really know who he was before the All or Nothing. I didn't really know he was part of our coaching staff or anything. But kind of linking into that is Arteta's sort of psychology and his philosophy in terms of outside of like football narratives. And, you know, when he gave that speech about his sort of, you know, having a heart problem when he was younger, a lot of people laughed at that, which I know they weren't laughing at the fact he was about to die, but I know they're laughing at the fact that, you know, why was he saying it? But what people don't understand is the psychology behind that and how elite, you know, his anecdotes are. You know, he's relating something so that people remember a scenario. We don't really tend to remember theories and philosophies. We tend to remember stories. And when he's talking about like a high performing team, and especially like in those situations, it's going to sink in with them a lot more than him just sitting there and saying, we're a high performing team. Like if I sat here and said that to all three of you should probably forget in a week's time that I even mentioned that. But if I was to tell you that story, you'll remember it years on. And even the whole, like, you know, when he spoke about his Liverpool experience and when he let the game pass him by, I know we lost 4-0, but for me, he kind of makes himself human. A lot of the times I don't know how people are, but I'm guilty of like I hate authority. Like I get very sort of edgy around authority, like when I'm speaking to my manager or even his manager. Like I get very sort of reserved and I don't speak as much. But you know when they sort of open up to you and speak about their life stories and their experiences, you kind of humanize them a bit more. They're like, yeah, I know he's my manager, but I can actually speak to him, and that's what I like because you know he seems to be like to the players, look, you can come to me. I know you may not want to, but here's other people that you can go to, but this is me. And I think that to me breaks a lot of narrative because people think his man management, like players hate him and all of this sort of stuff. So that to me just massively sits there and goes, this is why they love him, because he's human, but he also wants the best for them, and he's also trying to get them to perform. So
Yeah.
massive narratives I feel broken in terms of mentality, and you can see he's building a culture, and that's
Yeah.
because a lot of people used to be like, "What do you mean by that? Like how, you know, we lost like 3-0 or whatever it may have been," but you can see like, these things take time, but you can see him build it.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think, like you said, the whole narrative around everybody hates Arteta, like That's not it. You know, you can tell that they really like him and they really rate him. They all talked about his tactical, mind and how he always gets them up for games or gets them really prepared for games and things like that. That's not to say that, obviously I don't expect the players to come out there and say, well, this is how I would improve Arteta. But I do think that you get a sense of like genuine like for Arteta, which is great.
And respect. Yeah.
And respect, yeah. And then I guess mine is just like a quick one about like Josh Kroenke. I think that he comes off American, very kind of like eager, keen, wanting to get immersed in, but he kind of explained how he's aware or needs to be aware of the things that are going on online, but doesn't let that affect how he actually feels about the process, how the process is going. That kind of piggybacks off of what Souls is saying, is that from the top down, all the way down to the players, they know what they're doing and they have plans, they have a project, they have a process, they have benchmarks that they are all collectively involved in that don't have anything to do with what we think on the outside. That's right from the top of Josh Kroenke down to Arteta, down to the players. And so, you know, this idea that like everything that we're saying is infiltrating what they're doing, I don't think that that's true. They are all kind of collectively together, and I like that. So that's kind of my takeaway from it. Harry, do you want to finish us off with your thoughts on All or Nothing?
Yeah, listen, man, I absolutely loved it. Firstly, I enjoyed watching it so much. I stayed up till 1 a.m. just planning to watch the first episode. Then I watched the second episode. Next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. and I'm watching the third episode and trying to find an illegal download of the fourth episode. I thought it was a brilliant watch, and there's so many, I believe, so many myths that have been debunked. But I think, just to digress a little bit, what social media allows us to do, is give an opinion. But now our opinion can be heard by so many more people than the pub, or a conversation just with your friends. So on so many spaces last year, I'd hear things like Arteta's just a yes man and he doesn't like the players, or players don't like him and he can't motivate people. All these things are just being said about someone when we have no idea of what goes on behind the scenes, zero idea. A lot of salt thrown at Josh Kroenke, a lot at Edu as well. When really, as fans, we don't have any idea how a football club is run. We, as fans, we can certainly comment on players' performances and what they're good at, what they're bad at, because we have a set of eyes, but we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So I was just absolutely thrilled watching it. I think Arteta comes across so well, and he dispels all of those narratives against him. I think what's interesting, there was an interview with, or there's a part in the documentary with Edu and is it Steve Round, when Steve Round hints at Arteta being like top tactically, and Edu references his growth as a person, the team spirit, him talking to players. And that's something that probably where Arteta is inexperienced, and that's where he's growing as a human being, how to motivate people, what signs to spot. And there's a part where he asks Cedric about how he memorizes his father's phone number, all those little things which I just find absolutely fascinating to watch. And after watching each episode, it just made me realize that in Arteta, I feel we have an incredibly unique manager, an incredibly unique person who pays attention to every single little detail. And if he can't pay attention to that detail because of time constraints, he'll make sure someone else is. So in those scenes with Carlos and Nuno, really, finding out what's wrong with Nuno. And then you discover a new side of Ares, that he is sensitive and mistakes eat him alive, and he thinks about him and it consumes him. So in game, when he makes a mistake, he feels that and he can't essentially go over that. So part of his development is going to a different league, playing on loan, gaining confidence, and then coming back. So I just left that documentary amazing and almost feeling really, really proud. I found myself welling up on so many occasions. The speech from Stuart, the photographer, before the Spurs game. I just left it just thinking how much I love this club, how much I love these players, how much I love this manager. And I really feel like this manager is going to change so much for our club, so much. And I think in 10, 15 years' time, he'll go to Barcelona, he'll win a hell of a lot of things. And in 30 years' time, he'll go to Spain, manage Spain, and there'll be a statue of him somewhere in Barcelona. I personally think we'll go on to have one of the best managers that's ever graced the game. And I'm so happy that we got to see an insight to who Arteta is as a person. And those little stories about his heart problem, it's all about getting people to connect to you emotionally, exposing yourself so they fight for you, so they run through a brick wall for you. And that's about building a culture. There's a reason why you do that. There's a reason why sometimes when your first job, you'll go out for beers with your manager and he'll tell you about his background, he'll tell you about where he started, where he went to university. It's about identifying with someone, and then they're the people that work for you. And then when you have them on their side, they'll realize how important their club is or how big the companies they work for. And when you have guys all wanting to die for the badge, you achieve really, really good things. So yeah, I mean, nothing to debunk in particular, but just like my love for Arsenal was just like trebled. My love for this team has trebled. And then things like Guendouzi, it all starts to make sense. You know, you need people who are on side with you and who are ready to contribute in a positive way. And I look forward to seeing how the Aubameyang thing unfolded. And hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it feels like all of those decisions about sending Saliba out on loan, isolating Guendouzi, you know, stripping Aubameyang of the captaincy, they're all part of a process. So I look forward to seeing how that continues over the next few years. But yeah, man, I really loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it.
I can tell you like you loved it so much. I think we all did, and most Arsenal fans I think did like it. I think over like, you know, there's some people that act like they were being strapped down, you know, onto like a chair roped around their wrists, like with something on their eyes to make them watch it. But we all love this club and we know we can't get enough. So yeah, I agree with you. But we're gonna go ahead and end it there. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with a friend, get in the comment section and let us know what you thought about game week 1 for the entire Premier League, for Arsenal's game versus Crystal Palace. Let us know what you think about United, what you think about Spurs, what you thought about All or Nothing. And make sure you follow all the guys on Twitter. Their stuff, all their tags and all that kind of stuff are on the screen right now. And we will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.